and welcome to Asian Book Club, where we highlight Asian and Asian American authors. We are your hosts,
Jamae and Sabangan.
and I'm Stephen Park. And today we bring you our fourth and final read of Valley Verified by Kyla Xiao. This read has everything that we were hoping that it would have. But before we go into it, one of the things that we saw as a part of this Silicon Valley world is that step class that Zoe and Bernadette would go to often.
Desk stop.
Yeah, and it seems like such a fad kind of trend, which I'm sure in like 3 years, if this was a real thing, it's not going to continue to be there. Maybe some people would continue to take it, but it seems much more like a fad. Me being a physical therapist, I see this all the time where people get into something really heavily and then might fall off. But it's not necessarily always a bad thing.
Mm,
It opens up another venue for them to work out, at least for that time being. And yeah, it might be something that people carry over. It might be something that someone or some group of people love doing, and that gives them the amount of exercise that they need. And ideally, that then spins off to more things that keep them more active. And it keeps not only the body healthy, the brain healthy, it spurs a much more health conscious living.
for sure.
And with that said, I mean, you're not doing this as a part of a workforce kind of thing, but you started getting into something.
Totally. I started getting into spin classes and I didn't think that I would like it as much as I do now. I don't think it's a fad. I mean, I think it once was a fad, but now, like, people who are into it are into it.
Right. You mean a cult.
It can be seen as a cult for sure.
I think a lot of these CrossFit, spin class, yoga, bar, they're all conditioned to possibly be considered a cult because when someone loves something, they love talking about it and they
Hmm,
really get into it.
for sure. Do you see me as joining a cult?
No, but I think you really enjoy it, and I think it's nice that you found something that you really enjoy.
Mm-hmm.
Previously, it was much more in the dance realm, but with the lockdowns and everything kind of bringing that to a heavy halt, I've seen that it's been hard for you to get back into fitness things,
Mm-hmm.
and spin seems like the first thing that you've been able to do that you seem to have a joy for.
For sure. I think it's something about the community and the way that people interact with each other. I know that it is a workout class and most people just want to get in and get out, but those who stay behind are kind of nice. They want to talk, they want to say good job, and even though I feel like I didn't do as well as I could have, or at least that's another conversation. That's comparisonitis. But anyway, even though I'm drenched in sweat and look like a little monster coming out of class, when people say good job, that like lights up my heart.
Yeah, and I think there's something to the community. Firstly, you started taking the spin class with a community more specific to the BIPOC community.
Yes.
And so initially, there was some form of reciprocity in terms of what you were giving and receiving.
Mm-hmm.
And even if you're not talking to the people next to you, I do think there's a certain aura or something fills the space where there is a driven focus together,
Mm.
and usually in these places, people are encouraging. And whether you've been there for a long time, whether you've only been there for your first day, even if you don't talk to anyone, there is that sense that people seem to be encouraging others
Yes.
within that class and space.
Definitely.
I've noticed this through several different things. I mean, I've done run clubs for a long time, and then now I'm in weightlifting, and it's always encouraging when people are good within those things.
Mm.
But whether it's step class, whether it's spin class, I think it's important to find what fuels you, but also what gives you that sense of not necessarily purpose, because it's not purpose, but it's a sense of being there and a sense of wanting to be there.
For sure. And a sense of belonging too.
Yeah. So we'll get further into the book and where all this step class for Zoe has led up to. But before we do that, let's go into our recommendation for the week.
Our recommendation for the week is Essence Skincare. Essence Skincare, which was founded by Jasmine Tran, is modern skincare crafted with ancient wisdom, focusing on biodegradable practices and proven results. Some of my current favorite products are the Passion Fruit Lip Balm, the Dragon's Blood Moisturizer, and the Gaia Goddess of Earth Lip Gloss. All of the products that I've used so far feel so enriching and light on my skin, and I feel like I'm going to continue using their products. So, highly, highly recommend them. You can learn more through the website at essenceskincare.com. That's ESSANCE skincare.com, and find them on Instagram at Essence Skincare.
Yep, and that's going to be our recommendation for the week. Okay, so fourth and final read of Valley Verified by Kale Xiao. We've covered pages 277 through 359, which were chapters 35 through 44. Prior to this, what have we learned?
We've learned that Logan Horison's meeting goes kind of well for the FitPick team. However, an onslaught of bad press from Valley Verified makes the company look bad, destroying Zoe's reputation in particular.
Yeah, and with that reputation, she also goes into the spiral of not knowing who to trust.
Mhm.
She's starting to further her endeavor of disliking Lillian, who is the COO of FitPick.
Yes.
But one of the things that most recently bothers her is that she sees Marcus, who is Bernadette's fiance.
Mm-hmm.
Bernadette is Zoe's in San Francisco. Seems like she's Zoe's closest friend.
Yes.
But Lillian has a picture of Marcus and claims that he is her boyfriend.
Mm-hmm. And when we get into this read, one of the first things that is revealed is that Marcus is not Lillian's boyfriend.
Right. And Marcus is exactly who we thought he was within our last podcast.
Mm-hmm.
So Marcus was a protection. It was a false claim from Lillian. It was actually Lillian's cousin because Bill was being super creepy, just like he was when he was approaching Zoe.
Yeah.
Now, this relationship is going to become very, very necessary because the more we find out about Bill, the more there's a team forming against him.
Mm-hmm. And this team is kind of Zoe and Lillian against Bill. And the story shows how Lillian has been caring for and watching out for Zoe all this time.
Right. It wasn't a form of bringing her down, which was some of the clothing discussion that Lillian would have with Zoe. Behind the scenes, Lillian was doing things to try to prop up Zoe.
Mm-hmm.
There's another part of this team, which is Bernadette, which is Zoe's
Yeah.
friend. Bernadette is able to help find out more information about Bill because Bill has a pretty troubled past.
I think he brought the troubled past with him, so I think it's still part of his present.
Yeah. His past includes that he created this app about rating women on the college campus that him and his buddy would sleep with, and that was called Chick Pick.
Yeah, and at first they were rating people in the Greek community at USC, but it then spread out to all of the USC campus.
Right. This then led to Bill getting kicked out of school. It became the reason he started to pursue FitPick.
Hmm.
More recently, what we find out is that Bill is also the source of the article that pointed at Zoe as a scapegoat for everything that was recently going wrong with FitPick.
Right, making Zoe the issue rather than Bill.
Right. So Bill is trying to save himself.
Mm-hmm.
And now we have a team of Lillian, COO, Zoe, Chief Marketing Person, Officer,
Vice
maybe CMO,
President. Vice President of Marketing.
Vice President of Marketing. And then we have Bernadette. Now, Bernadette has a contact, which is how we find out that information about USC. And they're going to team up to try to take all of this to one of the board of directors so that they can finally take out Bill.
Mm-hmm.
Long story short, it's pretty successful. They're able to get Kiara White, who is the only woman on FitPick's board of directors. She is fully behind them. She has seen this behavior, obviously, before because she used to be a model and she's been in these big boardrooms.
Yes.
And lo and behold, after a lot of ups and downs, maybe they will, maybe they won't, we see that Bill finally gets kicked out of his position
Mm-hmm.
and FitPick is gonna undergo a regime change.
Yes. And one of those changes is that Lillian becomes the interim CEO and eventually the permanent CEO of FitPick.
Right. And as Lillian becomes the CEO, she is pushing Zoe to become the COO.
Mm-hmm.
And Yeah,
That was
Zoe,
successful.
yeah, she clearly is wanting to continue her role here. She is starting to find her place within Silicon Valley.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that helps her do that as well is this relationship that's blossomed.
Yes, we finally get the slow burn romance.
Yeah.
Zoe and Damien make up and make out.
Yep. And they kind of do even more than that. It seems like at least 3 months out of all this, that Zoe and Damien are in some form of relationship.
Mm-hmm.
They seem to have this bond that has brought them possibly into a living situation together.
Mm-hmm.
But more so, Damien's also kind of grown to find himself and pursue his own dreams.
Right. He starts to pursue writing, especially after Logan Horison's investment goes through for the company.
Yep. This is kind of what starts to lead to our happy ending. Zoe and Damien are together. Lillian is now a CEO, which is what she was pursuing. Zoe has created these friendships not only at Fitpic, but also has been able to maintain her friendships out in New York. She has helped bring on the investment of Logan Horrison, which was one of the big goals of this company in the first place.
Mhm.
So, all in all, we get this very happy ending.
Yes.
It's really hard to put into words briefly how well this book was tied together, though. I
Mm-hmm.
think this last read was so well done. And even though it seemed like all the pieces were being brought in together, it didn't feel rushed, it didn't feel hurried, and it felt very natural.
Definitely. It felt like all these loose strings were quickly tied together, but so neatly done that we were able to follow it all and get through to the end.
Yeah, and it seemed very predictable, not necessarily in a bad way, but we could kind of see where the trajectory was going. More so, the story ended in a light mood,
Hmm.
and for all the books that we've been reading that were heavy, I'm very happy that we got this.
Yes, exactly.
There was a really nice scene towards the end where I think it was just about the very end where Zoe is ready to go to her meeting. She's talking to Lillian, who's now the CEO and her boss, and she's having a good time. She's able to not only talk strategy, but also to feel relaxed.
Mm-hmm.
She has Damien at her side. She has the full support of all the friendships that are around her. And the scene that I'm talking about is one in which she looks at the back of her closet and there's the Silicon Valley Patagonia vest that Bill first gave her as she was walking into the office.
Mm-hmm.
And in her brain at first, she said, I would never wear this. This was not stylish. It wouldn't be something that fit me. And at the end of this book, she finally puts it on and is wearing it. I think they say in like a stylish manner or something.
Yeah.
But for me, what it showed is that in the beginning, it was her not feeling like she fit into Silicon Valley and didn't fit into the tech world.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end, she's figured out how to make that tech world her own and be a part of what's going on in a way that she didn't feel like she lost herself. And I
Mm.
thought that imagery was so nice.
For sure.
Did you have any parts that stuck out for you within this read?
Within this read, the scene that really stuck out to me was when Damien and Zoe were at the farmer's market. When Damien was showing his usual stoic demeanor, then later tells her, but I had these feelings for you. And
Mm.
she's like, me too. And then all of a sudden, moi.
And they kiss.
Yeah, so it kind of made me feel the dreamy Kilig moment.
Wow. So you were in it for the romance.
I was definitely in it for the romance. I know that that wasn't the point of this book, but I kind of wish there was a little more to it.
Well, if you are also like Jamae, just stick around to the end of this podcast and we'll have a little surprise for you. It's not really a surprise, but just stick around.
Yes.
Overall, then, with your moment, with how I thought, what did we think about this book?
I think that it was definitely the much needed breath of fresh air that we were anticipating and hoping for. I think that, like you mentioned, the small details and the crumbs along the way that was brought back at the end were so masterfully done. And I think I would probably recommend it to anyone who needs a break in their reading, especially when there's a lot of heavy or dark material that you're going through. Or even if you've been reading a lot of textbook material, this would break it up a lot.
Yeah, and on the other side of it, I agree with all that, but there was so much within this read that I think is led to be discovered, which is Zoe entering a male-dominated profession and seeing that world through her eyes, seeing the clash of that female relationship within a tech-driven space, also being able to further go into details of some of these very sleazy things that we see people do within their higher positions.
For sure.
There's so many topics that are brought up in this book that could be delved into further with extreme detail. I mean, frat stuff, like
Hmm.
not all frats, obviously, but the evidence of things that can go wrong with frat life and sometimes sorority life, it's not great. And,
Yeah.
we see that with Bill and the stuff that he did. So, yeah, there's a lot of heavy topics within it, but I appreciated how light the read was and kind of using those details as a way to drive the narrative of the character
Mm-hmm.
and have her figure things out. And yeah, the happy, fluffy ending was exactly what I would hope for from a book that was written this way. And the descriptions were good, the storytelling was great. There were twists and turns as you would go because the people you thought might have been bad might have been good. And yeah, it was a great story.
Yeah.
So, with that said, that wraps up Valley Verified by Kyla Xiao. We will be able to have a discussion with the author on our next podcast. But after that, we'll have our next book.
Yes.
So, before we tell you straight up what that next book is going to be, let's go into our hints of jam.
Yes. So, hint number one, the next book is a holiday themed young adult romance. Hint number two, the protagonist is an anonymous book blogger. And hint number three, the story is an enemies to lovers trope.
Yep. And if you were able to guess it off those hints, that's going to be pretty impressive. But if you weren't able to guess it, our book is.
The Holiday Switch by Tiff Marcello.
Yeah, and before we get into our first read, let's look at the back of the book to figure out more about this book. So it reads, he's switching up her holiday plans. Lila Santos is ready for her last winter break of high school. The snow in her small town of Holly, New York is plentiful. The mood is as cozy as a fuzzy Christmas sweater, and she's earning extra cash working at the local inn. The setting of the greatest film of all time, Holiday by the Lake, while moonlighting as an anonymous book blogger. But Leela's perfect holiday plans crash to a halt when her boss's frustratingly cute nephew, Teddy Rivera, becomes her coworker. Leela is type A, Teddy is type anything but Leela's way, and the two of them can't stop butting heads over tangled icicle lights and messy gift shop merch. But when they accidentally switch phones one afternoon, they realize they've been hiding things from each other. Will their secrets and an unexpected snowstorm bring these rivals together?
And a little bit about the author. Tiff Marcello is a veteran U.S. Army nurse and holds a Bachelor's of Science in Nursing and a Master's in Public Administration. She writes about families, friendship, and heartfelt romances.
Yeah, and if you recognize the name Tiff Marcello, it's because we have read her work in some portion in the past.
Mm-hmm. We read her work in last year's holiday read, Pasko na My Love.
Yeah, and so she was a portion of that entire compilation. And this time we get to read her work from beginning to end.
Mm-hmm.
But before we get to the end, we start with the beginning. And that's going to be.
Our first read is going to be pages 1 through 92, which are chapters 1 through 9.
Yep. And for anyone that had any thoughts or things that they wanted to share on Valley Verified with Kadley Xiao, or if you're super excited to read The Holiday Switch and want to get into it with us before we even start this book, how can people reach out to us?
Y'all can email us at asianbookclubpod@gmail.com or join the conversation on Instagram at asianbookclubpod.
We also have our website, which is asianbookclubpod.com, that has our bookshop with books that we've read in the past, books that we recommend, and books that we plan to read in the future.
And a great way to support us is to rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast.
Otherwise, make sure to be happy, be healthy, and read a book.
Ingat!
Bye.
Bye!